Hello everybody and welcome to the Modern Barber Masterclass with BaByliss PRO and Wez Jones. Today we're going to be looking at a haircut from the archives, and we've got a live demonstration of the techniques that have stood the test of time. Today's session is supported by BaByliss PRO, and I'd like to welcome Wez Jones to the stage.
Howdy.
Hey.
Slightly different stage. But
exactly, we were just talking about live shows and stages and it just got me in the mood.
Yeah, no, we're just going to have to pretend. We're going to pretend there's really bright lights and all our friends out in the crowd. But yeah, either way, it's nice to be here in my shop. This is actually the first time I've cut or clearly cut any hair in my shop, but done any sort of demonstrations or anything from here. So it's fun. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. And you've got kind of a treat for us today, and I'm going to let you explain it in your own words. What are you cutting today?
Yeah, it needs a few words, but I'll try and do it as few as possible. So when I got asked to do this, I wanted to do something a little bit different, and not just bring a conventional haircut to the table, because as much it's always fun to do, but I wanted to bring something from my past. I believe when you get these bad boys out, you should have a bit of fun with them. So I wanted to bring something from when I first started. So when I was 15, I'd say, in a barber shop, working Saturdays and starting my apprenticeship, my hair was, I'd say, tragic, but it's what everyone had at the time. And here's one I made earlier. And this is kind of the thing, and it looks crazy, but this is kind of the thing we were having at the time. And this, if you had this haircut, which we had many names for, one was the left hand V, one was the candy boy. There was all sorts of names for these haircuts. None of them stuck, funny enough. I will call it the candy cut because that's where I'm from, and I believe that's where this haircut originated from. But if you had that haircut, it meant that you was a brilliant right mid at football. You had a banging right foot on you, or you was just a handsome git at school. But everyone was having this haircut. But the beautiful thing with this haircut, as chaotic as it looks, it's actually a really good starting point to learn a bunch of barbering techniques, as opposed to your short back and sides and like your more conventional haircuts. At the time, this was actually one of the first haircuts I learned, which when I got told I was going to do this, I was a bit like, that's not a basic haircut. You look at it and you think, as crazy as it is and how much this haircut would not fit into today's society, at the time, I would never have just jumped in the deep end and tried this. But the beautiful thing is there's so many techniques involved in doing a haircut like this that they're really transferable onto other haircuts. You've got clipper over comb in here. You've got clipper confidence, like using the clippers to do freehand, clipper over comb. You've got scissor over comb. There's a bunch of different techniques in here, and you can actually just transfer them into any haircut. So I'm going to do a little bit of that on this head today. I've prepped it a little bit, just cut some length off. And I'll try and show you why the different steps of doing this haircut actually helped me today. So as much as this haircut I wouldn't give to my worst enemy, as much as that haircut isn't, for today's fashion, if you like, I can still use them skills today to complete my haircut. So first thing I'm going to do is I've sectioned this out. I've already clipped up this side as prep because I'm basically going to repeat it on this side. So I won't need to tell you what I've done there. I'll tell you in a second. But I've got my lovely BaByliss Supermotor clippers. And we're not doing skin fades on that. We're going to keep it really basic, really easy, because I'm going to show you a technique that I learned first. And the first thing I ever had to do being a barber was choose what grade I wanted. And let's say we've done a 2. A 2 was your go-to clipper grade back in the day, a number 2 back and sides. Well, in this haircut, there you go, we're doing an asymmetric sort of cut. Let me just clip that out of the way, make it a bit cleaner. There you go. We're going to do a bit of asymmetry, which means, not symmetrical, one-sided. But what we've done back in the day, the first technique we learned, this is really good for anyone who's just started out in barbering and wants to pick up a set of clippers and gain a bit of confidence without going straight into skin fades or, clipper over comb straight away, is just using your body shape and the shape of a head to deliver a nice blend or a nice sort of transition with the clipper work. So as we can see, the head rounds out. So you've got your apex or the top, right? Not the top of a mountain, call it your apex. That comes out flat. If you put a comb at the back behind the ear, you'll see that at some point you're going to get a right angle, and that'll be where the head starts turning square. If you was to get a set of clippers, stay over there, set of clippers, let's say a number 2, and we'll go in. I've already got rid of his beard, he didn't need that.
No.
And go in and just use the shape of the head and a really slow clipper hand, just going straight up. And at first, if you're not as confident, you can do it a bit more of an angle. But the whole point of this is that you're actually using the shape of the head to blend the haircut as you go. Because the higher up the head you go, the further the hair comes out. So your head's rounded, and then when it comes out to here, it's going to create a square shape. So essentially, you're blending the haircut because the length is actually getting longer. But it all comes from just getting that clipper confidence of going straight up and following the head shape. You're not going against the head shape, so you start rounding the head out. You're just going up and slow. And this is the first thing I get any of my apprentices to do. And then you can get a bit more confident if you want to take it higher. But it's such a good way to gain a bit of clipper confidence, especially when you're doing like a short back and sides or something. Generally, you go a bit lower. For this haircut, I'm taking it a little bit higher because I'm going to do something a bit more savage. But it's just a really nice way to learn how to blend a haircut and give yourself less work to do. But so we'll do this all the way. And because I'm combing the hair down here, it's going to graduate with that line. So a bit of asymmetry. That's where it gets a bit more creative. But I'll show you why in a minute. These clippers are so good for wet hair as well. Like generally, most people say, don't cut wet hair with clippers. It's not very good for the motors, that sort of thing. These bad boys literally just chew through it. They have no worry with wet hair, especially on a headlock as well. They're not the most forgiving of hairs on a block. These have no problem with it at all. As we're going up, this is another little technique to back in there as well, using a comb and bringing the hair to it. And still, you're following that shape of the head, so you're not going with the shape of the head, you're coming out flat against it.
This must have been such a fun cut to do when you were starting off in your career.
It was terrifying because it's quite an intimidating thing to do. Like you're removing a lot of hair at once. You look like you're taking a lot. And again, this haircut is not what people would generally do now. There's a million different ways to approach this haircut. And that's the beautiful thing with learning, is that when I first started, sectioning clips, I wasn't allowed them. Like I got told if I'd made a man have sectioning clips in his hair, he'd tell me he looked like Minnie Mouse. So I wasn't allowed sectioning clips, which is now, when I think about it, crazy, because they make your work clean. Like they really, obviously, I don't know what I would do without them. And again, like it's just great to see how techniques change. Nowadays, the way I cut hair to when I first started are a world apart. I used to do haircuts within like 15 minutes. Because that was just what I got taught. Again, this 15 years ago, barbering was a slightly different place back then. Hairdressing techniques and hairdressing industry took a massive influence onto the barbering industry, which I think is amazing. I'm split down the middle. I learned barbering and hairdressing, and they were worlds apart. So I had this side of it, which was very much clipper and comb and minimal scissor work. And then I had the hairdressing side, which taught me my cross graduations, which is the approach I would take now to this haircut. I do cross graduation and then clippering after. But back then you didn't have time for that. Like in a busy walking barber shop, where for some reason every one of your clients wanted this haircut. I still don't know why, but we loved it every time. I blame footballers. Beckham had like a version of this haircut, and I think that would play the massive part in it. But you know, guys were having this haircut more often than not, and you just had to adapt to it. And this was a haircut you could spend, you know, 45 minutes on to an hour, like perfecting it, or you got it done like in 15 minutes, and you just use technique to get you through it. You know, you'd use body shape. That's eliminating a lot of clip over combing. You haven't got to go through from a 2 to a 3 to a 4 or the reverse. It was just using the shape of a head to do all the work for you. And you know, a lot of it is, you know, bad study, I'd say. You know, there's, especially now the world's a little bit different. Like barbering's definitely different. You wouldn't necessarily do any of these techniques because you want to have a bit more control over what you're doing. You're not going into the dark. However, I still feel there's a place for it. When you're doing I'd say your day-to-day haircuts, like your free back and sides, that sort of thing. A lot of that especially that technique, just using the shape of a head to do your clipper work, plays a massive part, because you can eliminate 10-15 minutes of clipper overcombing, scissor overcombing, just with using nice fluid motions. And now I've done that, you can see we've got a little bit of weight line. And this is again why this haircut's pretty good to learn on, because now I can clipper overcomb that, and I'm not having to start all the way down here and try and clipper overcomb, graduate it in, getting it square. Just doing that has made that square background for me. I can go in there, I can see the difference. I can just start to square it off. And these combs are, I've always used them for this sort of work, because they're generally, this thicker part here is about a 1.5 in a clipper grade, maybe there or thereabouts. And this can be a 1. So, you know, if you're bringing it up and pulling it away from the weighted area, you're going to get longer. And then, you know, if you've done a number 1, you can go in with confidence and use the comb against the scalp. Just work our way up, eliminate that weight.
And do you want to tell us a little bit about the BaByliss tools that you're using today?
Yeah, so the Supermotor Clipper, these are great. I've used these pretty much since they were corded. I bought them because I thought they looked like lightsabers, and I was like, yep, I'm having a bit of them. I can honestly say everyone I've ever spoke to that's ever bought a pair of BaByliss clippers has said the same thing. I didn't know anything about them, but they looked like a lightsaber. But I was using them, and I thought they were brilliant. Even in the corded version, I generally used to work with a corded clipper anyway, so it wasn't much of a big deal for me. But then when they brought out the cordless version, I was blown away, to be honest. And this is before I had anything to do with BaByliss, so I'm not just saying it. I really like the clippers. I got my first pair of corded clippers. I actually bought from cordless. Sorry, I actually bought from Kai Wilson, who worked for BaByliss at the time, and he done a collection which was the clipper and a Barber necklace, which was an old clipper. I ain't wearing it, but that was it. It was an old, just this. It was a clipper blade on a chain. I really loved it, and I started using them. I was like, brilliant. And I got into touch with them and started touching base, started working with them. But yeah, they're brilliant clippers. You know, 3 hours if you're happy to charge your clippers overnight or at the end of the day or lunch break. 3 hours would generally give you about 120 hours run time, which is, you know, quite a lot. 120 hours, 120 minutes. Sorry, 120 hours. That's quite a long time. Yeah, that will give you 120 minutes run time. So in between haircuts, if you're popping them down for sort of, you know, 5-10 minutes at a time, it generally gives you enough to do the next couple of haircuts, and you never get to a point where you're like, oh, crap, I need to charge them. Right. So now I've done that, what you see, I'm just unclipping this area. So this bit here, if you to pull it out, it's nice and square. It's a really good shape to go into. Now I've released the rest of the locks. We can see there's a lot more weight and graduation build up. So here you'd have the choice of, do I cut the top and then transition it after, or do I clip over comb, blend it all in and then cut the top or cut the fringe or whatever. The way I got taught to do this haircut was pretty much all clipper over comb and a little bit of scissor work through the top. So what I would do here is go back in with clipper over comb, and it's a little bit less structured, a little bit messier. Let me get it over here. A little bit messier than what you'd see today. But what we would do, because we used to crop fringes out a lot as well. I need to find a picture. There's a picture of me in I want to say year 10, when I'd not long started working for my barbershop, and my hair was literally identical to this. And
that picture, that is very important.
I look like a naked mole rat. I look very strange.
Sandra has messaged us. I don't know why I said Sandra then. She's probably called Sandra. Sandra Hellier has messaged us saying she remembers this style so well. Beckham had it and she remembers really well doing this kind of cut. And she says it's really nice to hear that you've done hairdressing and barbering, and really nice to see something so different and inspiring.
Oh, that's a lovely message. That's nice to hear. Yeah, I know that's really really nice message. I think the best thing I ever done was learning both, and it gave me a really solid base to then transition off and do my own thing. In the sense of, if I wanted to concentrate a little bit more on some creative styles, I believe the hairdressing side of things give me a little bit more freedom of that, because I knew about reverse graduation, little things that come into play. However, the barbering side of things definitely taught me quick techniques to get to the creative side a bit quicker, if that makes any sense. So where today, you might do a whole base of a haircut with scissor, using scissoring techniques such as like cross graduation, that sort of thing. I believe when I first started barbering, I was doing essentially that, but with clipper over comb, and I could do it a little bit quicker. And essentially, all a clipper is a lot of pair of scissors. It's just how you hold them is a little bit different. How they deliver the haircuts a little bit different. But it was definitely fun. I think it was definitely a good thing that I'd done both. Just quickly jump in. So what I'm actually going to do now, which is another very scary thing, because we've still got all this length on top, we've got all the length from the bulk on the side. I'm actually going to take the fringe out, and this is really fun for anyone to do who, is a little bit unsure of how to go about removing a fringe. So what we'll see on this one is, you can see that shape. It's like actually follows the shape, and the apex is the longest part. This is all, again, just used from a steady technique and having a little bit of cojones to do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring all this length from the front. I've got a number 2 still on there, coming down. I'm just going to comb that hair onto the clippers and whack it off. And again, this is if you're not long been barbering, or you're not sure of what this technique is actually going to deliver, it's quite an intimidating technique, because you're removing a lot of hair at once. You're in the dark, I suppose, as well, like of what you can see, because you've got a lot of hair actually covering the technique of what you're doing. But what you are doing, because you're combing all the hair from here onto it, you're actually graduating that hair from longer to shorter. So you're doing a lot of work, so when it comes to taking the length off the top, you're actually like saving yourself a little bit of time. Again, it just takes a little bit of confidence. So for something like a skin faded crop, a lot of guys are having their fringes quite tight, quite square. For anyone who wants to take it even a little bit tighter, maybe not number 2, but you can whack a number 3 or number 4 on, or clipper over comb. which is the other thing, which I'll demonstrate now, which is just another nice quick technique. You can do that to remove the length a lot quicker than scissoring, come into that sort of area, finding you need to clip over, comb it after. You can just go in there, clipper, comb right to the head, flicking out. And as long as you put that comb in and pivot out, you're not going to do any damage.
So what do you get asked for most regularly in the barber shop nowadays, and it's obviously changed over the years, and in what way?
People's money back. No. Generally speaking, nowadays, obviously we haven't worked for so long, it's actually hard to think really, but crops were definitely a big thing around here, and not necessarily like skin faded crops, but just generally something a bit tighter and a bit more easy to maintain for people. We live in Leigh-on-Sea, which is quite a mixed area. We've got your skaters, you've got surfers, there's a lot of artists and like quite eclectic people in the area. But we also live directly next to the C2C, which is the direct link into London, where you have your stockbrokers and things like that. So it's quite an interesting mix, really. But there's a lot of, I'd say, safe haircuts, but with a slightly artistic flair. So there's a lot of crops, maybe not skin faded, but like with nice tapers. There's a lot of people having something slightly longer. You're like Christian Bale sort of feel with slick backs. There's actually a lot of long hair as well. We've got let's get rid of that. We've got a lot of people with hair like mine who just come in just to have like a bit of an undercut around the temples and the long hairs off. Especially with lockdown, a lot of people grew their hair, and it's sort of, I think it's definitely become quite an easy thing for people to maintain now, especially with not going out and not having to get up as early for work. People are quite happy to have longer hair. They've just accepted it. So what I'm doing is just all this weight on top. Said I could go in now and start scissoring the top, creating a bit of shape and connecting in these sides. But I'm just going to go in old school, clip over comb. I'm going to bring all the weight down, following the same shape, bringing it up and just connecting these points. And again, this isn't, I wouldn't, the way I'd explain this is not pretty Barbary. This isn't, these aren't techniques that you can stand back and go, oh, that's lovely. I love the way he does that. These are get it done barbering skills, which again are transferable, and they have a place in the barbershop. They definitely have a point in which they're needed, as opposed to a point where you're cutting to not look good, but you're doing a certain technique because it's a visually pleasing way of doing it. Sometimes you are in a position where you just need to get the work done and get hair on the floor.
Come April the 12th, I think a lot of people are hopefully going to be in that position. It's going to be
yeah, it's going to be hectic. It's definitely going to be crazy.
Yeah.
How's he looking? So again, on this side, make sure he's in the way there. He gets a bit sleepy, pops his head down. I've not named him yet. I don't know what to name him. What should I name him?
I've been doing this now for a couple of weeks and I'm all out of names. Hang on, let me think. What would you say is quite a Canvey Island name? Maybe we can go.
Oh God.
I'll toss it back to you.
Yeah. Oh God. Too many to name. I'll tell you what. Like, if anyone's watching, if on the live, I know we reshare this after. Anyone's watching the live, give your best name for him, and the name I choose will win a free t-shirt. You'll win one of these.
Yes.
There you go. I'll choose it later tonight. There you go. Takes the pressure off me then.
Okay. Do you want me to shout them out as they're coming in?
Yeah, can do. If there's any absolutely spicy ones.
I quite like it. It's a little throwback. Got Cyril.
Cyril, who said that?
Someone called Leona Keir.
That's so weird. That's that's my brother's other half. But also my missus' parents' names, missus' parents' dog's name, and she wouldn't have known that. So that's really weird. Very strange. Okay.
And we've getting some more comments about this look, kind of taking them back to when they started out in barbering.
Yeah.
And someone's asked if anyone does still ask for this look in your shop these days.
I wish they did. I wish they did, so I could refuse them, to be honest, and say, "What are you doing? Don't do it." No, unfortunately, no one really. There's not variations, but I think there's definitely haircuts derived from this. We still have some guys having cropped out fringes with it a bit textured everywhere. That's pretty cool look. Whereas rather than it clipped on the sides, they'll have it more down to a scissor length, bit surfery. They're always pretty cool. But yeah, generally, especially with the length of the back, your side styles, that's kind of a bit of a thing of the past. But
mullets are back.
Yeah, that's the thing. This is essentially if you kept all of the back and just took out from the temple to the ear, that's a mullet, really. Right. So, I mean, I've done a mullet on Lewis, who works for me here, and it was essentially this, but just all left along at the back. So there's definitely again, transferable skills. They're there.
We have another name.
Oh yeah.
Shane with a Y.
Oh, grim. Oh no, that's
very kind of disparate names there. I like what they've done.
Yeah. Okay, right. So from the top, this is definitely a technique that is used more than not. Bit of profile sectioning, and especially for your crops and slightly more textured styles, we're actually going to follow the head shape. Whereas, so if you wanted a pompadour, you'd go longer towards the front and concave it down. We're actually going to follow the head shape. And because we've already cropped the fringe out, we've already got a guideline where to go from. And again, you could do this if you was doing a crop or a nice textured number and you wanted the fringe slightly shorter. Even if you wanted the fringe longer, if you cut that in first, you've actually got a bit of a guideline to work off of. Let me just go in there. Obviously, depending on the client as well, you might do the fringe, they want the cropped out fringe, but you might pull the hair up in front of them and they say, "Oh no, mate, can I have it longer or have it shorter?" This is just, he ain't got an opinion. So I'm just taking it from the guideline.
Someone has asked how much you would charge for this haircut.
500 quid. No, well, if it was in my shop now, it'd be 21 quid. However, if you asked me back in the day when I first started doing haircuts, it probably would have been about 14 quid, I reckon it was.
Wow.
About that. No, actually, do you know what was cheaper than that? I think it was about £10.50. Which is mad. Mad now. All them years ago. I sound ancient, and I'm not a spring chicken, but I am only 29.
Yeah,
and I forget this.
You're like a old head on young shoulders.
Yeah. Oh, something like that. Don't have young shoulders and falling apart. But, right, so with this, I'm just following this shape, just doing a few sections through the top. And then what I'm going to do is, again, something that might not necessarily come into a lot of haircut shapes now, but it was definitely something that was popular. Well, not popular. It was something you did for this particular haircut. And a lot of haircuts, especially when you're trying to produce a masculine shape, will tell you never to remove corners and you want to keep a square haircut. Well, this isn't a square haircut. It's, it is a pointy style haircut. So we're not going to keep it square. So what I like to do here is I've taken almost my guideline through the middle, is cut that in half. I'm trying not to get blinded by this ring light as well. So it's really bright. And you just take little sections from the front, straight up, and you got a connection point here, your connection point there. You just marry the two together. Go down. You can still keep it clean. And all you're doing is connecting. And then when you come to styling, your shape's going to be very triangular towards the middle. Again, this is definitely something you might not see in today's sort of haircuts. But again, if you've got someone who struggles with width on their hair and a lot of bulk carrying through the sides, you might not want to keep the haircut as square. You might want to take it slightly triangular. And this is just removing corners and removing weight. That's all that length's doing really, is producing weight to the corners. So if you want a slightly weightless haircut, something like a really tight crop, if you've got like a number 4 on top or 6 on top and you want to remove the corners, you can do it just like that. And there's a few ways to do it. You could clip or overcomb that again. You could scissor overcomb it. This is just the way I like to do it. Feel a bit more in control of the haircut.
We've got another question, which is asking about if there are any influences outside of barbering that you would encourage people to look into.
Oh, influences outside of barbering.
Yeah, film, culture, music.
I mean,
you personally.
Personally, I've got quite a few, I'd say. Music was a massive thing of mine for donkey's years. I used to be a musician as well as a barber for quite a few years. And there was definitely artists out there that I sought inspiration from, more like in the grunge years. So people like Chris Cornell from a band called Audio Slave, who's my favourite musician. I loved what he done. I loved what he sang about. On the other side of that, people in the art world, I think you can draw inspiration from anyone, but I think the main thing, I know it sounds a bit self-righteous, but it's to try and draw inspiration from people around you, real people. And if you can't get inspired from any of them, you've got to try and inspire yourself, because sometimes you can be, it's getting really deep. Sometimes you can be left in a real, like dark hole where a lot of people's inspiration doesn't shine through quite as much, and not a lot of people, and not a lot of times do you have things there to give you a kick up the arse. You need to try and give it to yourself a little bit, which is a really backwards way of saying, sometimes you gotta look in the mirror and work out what you want to do next and go for it. Nice. That answered that question at all?
Yes.
In a really weird way.
We've got some more names.
Oh yeah.
At least I think this is a name.
Oh God.
Someone's written Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs of the Barbering World. Full name. I'm not sure. I presume that's for the mannequin. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with
Steve Jobs is the what's it called guy, isn't he? The Microsoft guy.
Apple, yeah.
Apple.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then
I'm not very good at technology.
And then another suggestion for Brooks.
Brooks. Ooh.
Cool.
Oh, yeah, that's a name. I'm just trying to think back to when I was cutting hair. One of the main reasons I got into cutting hair is because I played football a lot, and there was a lot of footballers at the time, Beckham, Ronaldo, people like that were having really cool haircuts, and I wanted to give them to my mates and the guys I played football with, rather than them go down to the local barber shop. And I'm just trying to think of the guys I used to play football with. Like, and if they ever see this, they're probably all going, yeah, I had that haircut. I unfortunately had that haircut. Right, so what I'm doing now, I'm just going to spin this round a second once I've done this. So what I'm doing, because this is asymmetrical, and this is, again, a technique that can be transferred into, that light makes it quite harsh. What it can be transferred into is a little bit of over direction, which is quite handy if you're learning to do bobs, or you're learning to do like mod haircuts and you want to create a bit of weight. Is that we obviously want all this hair to go that way, to this left hand side, and we can see the sort of way it's going. So what we're going to do is build up weight here. So what we're going to do, just like you're doing cross graduation, is take a section and we're going to direct that back to where our weight started. So this is our weight line here. And we'll connect that in. You can see the guideline underneath, which we've done from the clipper over combing before. And just following that line. And then each section we take, we're going to direct back to that point. So you can call it like a fixed graduation point. Call it what you will. I just see it as a point you go back to, you bring them sections there, and it's going to build up weight on this left hand side and graduate that in nicely. A fixed guideline, that's the word. I'm trying to remember the word.
We've got some more names.
Oh yeah,
Quaid.
Quaid. Whoa, that's a spicy name.
Isn't it spicy? Yeah. Also Clay.
Clay. Okay.
Simple, nice. And we've got a couple more questions about the styles that you see coming in after the latest lockdown. I know we spoke a little bit about people hanging on to their length. Are there any other kind of styles that you think?
I think coming back in, it's gonna be hard. I mean, because I've been quite disconnected from. I think everyone has, obviously, but been quite disconnected from people. So it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see the custom basis more than anything, to know what they're doing, to know what they want. Obviously, like in any sort of fashion or trend, you can put it out there and hope that it catches on and delivers. And just generally think, if there's a certain style of haircuts you want to deliver, classic, whatever. If you ain't doing them at the time, then you put them out there, tell your clients to have them, have a haircut yourself that you think is pretty cool, and hope that it catches on. That's generally what I used to do. If there's a certain haircut that I want to do, I'd have it done and hope someone go, oh yeah, I'll have what you've had. It didn't happen too often, but other than this one. But yeah, I think longer length's definitely going to be a thing. Not that long, but maybe that sort of 90s sort of soft style is really low maintenance sort of haircuts. Very consumer friendly, stuff like, a lot of guys are letting their hair drop a little bit more. So soft, part-ins and curtains, that sort of thing. I think could definitely be a thing. Or everyone will go nuts and start having mullets, hopefully. But I'd prefer that, to be honest. I think that'd be much more fun. Yeah. Okay, so just quick, we've got to connect this top into the back. And again, you could do this before what I've done down here. I was just showing you that bit at the time. And all you do, just like any haircut, is create a connection point. So you took the profile from up here. So all we do is get that profile section, connect it in. And because we want length towards the back, like especially around here, we'll do a uniform layer. So following the shape of the head around here. And as we come down here, just like where we was over directing it, we're not really creating a reverse graduation. we're actually just going with a square layer because it goes in at the bottom anyway. You're already going to create that shape. You're not having to over exaggerate it by leaving it longer. If that makes sense to anyone. But I'll quickly do this. I know so we are on a time limit. I do chat more than most women in a coffee shop.
It's all good. I'd love to see this look to completion. So you carry on.
I think he would as well. He's getting a bit restless.
He's falling asleep again.
That's it. Like, the main thing with this is, on the grand scheme of things, I'm just having fun doing this. Like I said to myself the other day, I was like, I've not done that haircut in donkey's years, like a long, long time. And it was a really fun haircut to do, especially it was at the beginning of my sort of career. It was really fun haircut to carry out because it was just, for anyone who's learning, when you first get that first haircut done and you're like, I've done it. Like, and when you do it with no assistance, or you get someone to come and check it over and they're like, yep, that's fine. Rather than, oh, you can do this, you can do that. This was my haircut, I think. And I'm pretty sure I was doing it better then than what I do now. But it was definitely my like, yay, I've done it haircut, which let me then, progress onto more consumer friendly haircuts, I'd say.
Oh,
But,
we've got a question actually about apprenticeships versus college.
Yeah.
Someone asked, would you recommend a barbering apprenticeship or to go to college? I've nearly finished my level 3 hairdressing, but they've been struggling with COVID, so they kind of want to know what to do next.
Yeah, it is definitely a personal choice. I mean, I done an apprenticeship, and at the time, you couldn't do a barbering course. Like the only place you could really get them was London, that sort of thing. My thing was just hairdressing, and then you cut short ladies' hairstyles. But I learnt my barbering through a barber shop, so I'd say an apprenticeship is definitely the way to get homegrown knowledge, like real industry proof knowledge. And that's not saying anything bad about colleges. It's just me saying that it's like learning to drive. You learn how to control a car, you learn how to not crash into a wall. But when you first go out on a drive down the motorway, you're petrified. And that's where you really learn. You learn people's personalities, you learn their reactions. And barbering's definitely the same thing. It's, not every haircut is A, B, or C. It's A with a little bit of this because he's got a slightly different growth to his hair, and there's a lot of that sort of thing that you can't really pick up in college, I think. But colleges are a lot more advanced than what they used to be. And there's a lot more concentration on the barbering world for colleges. So, I definitely think there's good points and bad points about both. A bad point, I suppose, in having an apprenticeship is that, a lot of the time, if you're in a barbershop that isn't isn't as purpose built for training apprentices, then you could be left behind a little bit if you're not having someone take the time to show you certain things. It's definitely I've been in a very of different shops, and some shops we've had dedicated nights to training people, and then very much like this shop where we don't necessarily have the time to have that particular model night or model day, so we have to train people around different hours. So there's definitely pros and pluses for both, I'd say. And that's a very on the fence answer.
No, it's diplomatic.
Diplomatic, yeah. It was a PC answer.
No, I think it was really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so we're nigh on coming to like a complete shape for this. So this is a bit of cross-checking. Again, I'm just standing here so you guys can see it. Generally speaking, my body shape might be slightly different. But this is just checking the corners, make sure it all tallies up. You know, you'll probably see me dragging sections a little bit, which, you know, by all accounts, you shouldn't really do. Sorry, a very itchy nose. This hair always makes my nose itch. It's not really something you should do. You shouldn't drag your sections. Try and keep your sections very clean, very precise. You know, I know my way around this head and a few heads a little bit, I suppose, to a point where I can get away with some shortcuts. Oh, Barber joke. But like in the sense of, I know what hair's going to do when I grab it and pull it a certain way that isn't technically correct. But that's only come from years of doing things a certain way, finding things where you pick up certain hair and you're like, I don't need to do all them 3 steps. I could just do one. And, you know, some people might call that lazy. I say think smart, not hard, or work smart, not hard. If I can find a quicker way to do something and get it done exactly the same way, why wouldn't I do it? Okay, right. So that's starting to look a little bit like what we're going for. So you can see there's a little bit of weight still, still a bit of length through the top, which is fine. So what we're going to do is dry this off. Actually, before that, we'll just do a quick bit of chipping into the top just to create a bit of texture. And again, something we used to do back in the day was a lot of razoring, which, you know, is definitely a very commonly used tool now. You know, it's great to see actually, like a lot of people put their texturizing shears and their razors down for a very long time. Every time I look, you know, every sort of hair tutorial I watch, a lot more people are picking them sort of things back up now again, which is quite fun to see, really. Again, quite hairdressing techniques and stuff. Okay, right. I'm going to use a hairdryer, so I apologise. Talk amongst yourself.
Well, on the other side.
Yeah. Before I blow dry this, I'm not going to use a diffuser. I'm using I can't talk. My Italia Brava BaByliss hair dryer. I'm just going to literally blow it in the direction that I've cut it, and get it as voluminous as I can, as quick as I can as well. Done. That's good.
Hey, speedy
right.
hairdryer.
Yeah.
Very cool.
These hair dryers are so powerful.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, I mean, that took me not even a minute. Right. So where this haircut is now, I left it a little bit damp there so it can curl up and do its own little thing. Is just a nice shape. But what we can do is a bit of freehand, with our clipper in, a little bit more scissor over comb, just to refine it. One of the things I always used to like doing with this haircut, which is quite a cool technique because you can transfer it onto, you know, things like flat tops. And again, this haircut for me was about gaining confidence in doing techniques. It wasn't necessarily about delivering, you know, the world's best haircut. It was just about gaining confidence, especially with clippers, because when you first pick one of these up, you're like, oh my lord, what is this? Like they're quite a intimidating tool to use, especially when they've got cords. Like again, this makes it a little bit easier for the cordless. They're very light, considering they've got an all metal housing. They're actually quite light. But what we're going to do, boost them up a bit, is because we want this shape to be nice, we're just going to freehand a little bit this shape, just getting all these fluffy little hairs off. This is a technique that you can do for this sort of thing that you wouldn't necessarily always, unless you're doing a flat top, you wouldn't necessarily always do a free-handed technique on Caucasian hair. Obviously, you see it a lot on Afro-Caribbean hair, things like that. But you wouldn't necessarily do it on a lot of Caucasian hair because of the movement of it. If you're cutting it in one place and then you wash it and it's moved, then that shape's been almost redundant. You haven't needed to do it. But for this haircut, this is so short, it's not going to move. So you can create that shape, and no matter how he styles or how he washes it, it's going to do the same thing.
We've had a comment again from Sandra to say that it's so refreshing to see something that's not fading, and that she's going to encourage all her barbering students to watch this. And a big thank you to you.
Oh, that's a very nice thing to say. Thank you. It's it's the thing is with skin fades and stuff is they're brilliant. They're very, very handy to know now. My thing with it is it's numbers. Like the biggest part of the skin fade is the numeric value of it. It's 3, 2, 1, 0.5, half, 0, whatever way you want to do it. And as long as you can understand the numbers, then you've got a rough idea of what to do. And it just covers a very small part of barbering. I believe, that's great, but if you add it to the techniques of basic barbering, clipper over comb, scissor over comb, that sort of thing, then you can have such a big arsenal of tools rather than just, I can do a skin fade or I can work in numbers. Because no matter what barbershop in the world you work in, there's always going to be someone that comes through the door that says, can I have a full scissor haircut? Or can I just have a clipper over comb? Or someone like an old boy who comes in and goes, I want a short back and sides. And you're like, sure, sir. What number do you have? I don't have a number. Do you have it scissor cut? No. And at that point, you're like, well, that only leaves clipper over comb. And that's where you have to think, right, stop thinking about numeric value of 1, 2, 3, 4. We start thinking about hair shape, like how to use clipper and comb. Like there's a lot more attributes to it that I think are more relevant than you think. As much as 3/4 of barbershops now are built up on, people doing skin phase day, like every haircut pretty much, there's still a person that needs something different. And why would you not want to learn that?
Yeah. It makes business sense.
Yeah, just put that on there. Again, this is just refining the shape. You can go as severe with this as you want, or as soft as you want. You could turn it into a full-on mohawk if you really intended on. But it just creates that nice shape. And there's still people having these sort of shapes, like especially in Afro-Caribbean barbering, which you do a very similar technique. Like there's still a lot of people having these sort of shapes. There's a player for Arsenal called Aubameyang. He's the first person I think of when I think of this haircut, because he has typically this style shape, very pointy, very triangular shape, and someone's got to be able to do it. And I'm hoping that person who's done it has learned haircuts from 2004.
Got another suggestion for his name as Solomon.
What was it?
Solomon.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. I'd love to know where all these names are coming from and what person they know that they're shaming by calling the dolly head.
Yeah.
What's the backstory?
There's some definitely interesting names being floating around.
Sure.
Right. So at this point as well, this is where you think, I said I've done the number 2 and used a lot of clipper over comb, but here, if you are insistent on learning like skin fades, etc., or tapers, there is a perfect canvas to do a taper in, or something along the lines of like patterns or something like that. You could do whatever you want with it. It's a nice clean canvas. So for learning purposes, if you're at home and you've got a head block and you want to try some new things out, it's a good haircut to learn in preparation to learn the next haircut. Obviously, you can't do a long mod haircut on this, but you can play around with some clippers and see how creative you can get. All right, so I'm just going to use my that's a comb. I'm just going to use that and these trimmers, which is my T-line trimmers from BaByliss. I love these little skeleton trimmers, and just going to tidy up this hairline. Not many Caucasian males might want their hairline really crispy, but it's just a nice thing to do, this style haircut, just to bring it in, smile it up a bit. On blockheads, obviously you can't really do hairlines too clean because they don't work that way. But we'll give him a little tidy up. We don't want hair around his ears. These are brilliant clippers, especially on the skeleton trimmer, because you've got a little bit of extra clipper length to actually get around the ear. Not that you can bend his ears, but you know what I mean.
Darren was trying to bend his ear last week, I think.
You know what? If you're brave enough and you ain't worried about doing it, if you get a little blade and cut on the top of the ear, you can actually flip them around a little bit easier. I've not done it. These are pretty good. So if you're looking for blockheads, Pivot Point do very good blockheads. Yeah, this is, again, just to summarize this haircut. I don't want you guys to look at this haircut and go, he actually thinks that would work in 2021, because it's a long way from the truth. I'd love this haircut to come back in fashion, but the value of this haircut is the training aspect of being able to learn clipper over comb, to be able to learn how to use your clippers with confidence and use the shape of the head, and just to try something different. Because there's a lot of, even in hairdressing, there's a lot of ladies having shorter hair. There's a lot of techniques in here, like the overgraduation, that can really, be transferred. I'm just going to take fluffy ones off these. I use my trimmers for everything, by the way, in the sense of even just trimming the fluffy bits off longer lengths of hair. This is all wrapping around here quite nice, but there's a few little spicy dead ends that I don't like. I'll just whisk over them. Just by flicking the blade up against them without going directly into them. Yeah. I think you should have a line in his eyebrow or something saying it's from Canvy, but it's not the thing to do. We'll give him a little spicy line just to make him feel at home. Again, these clippers are brilliant for doing any detailing work. If you do any sort of tram lines or sketches. If you do any cat scratches or whatever they call them these days, when I first started barbering, patterns were what we done. I'd love to be able to share some pictures with you one day of the haircuts we were doing, because it was essentially this with a whole set of patterns on one side.
Amazing.
And it was good fun. I'll just give him a line for now. That'll keep him happy. Again, there's more things you could do into this. Go into chop it through more. You go through texturizing and shears, just to keep it, take a bit of weight out of it. I'm quite, when I texturize these sort of haircuts, I'm a little bit more free flowing. I'm not individual sections, and then I make sure I go through every section. I use my hands and my senses a little bit more. I actually do a lot of texturize and shear over finger, which you just got to make sure you don't texturize your knuckles off, because that hurts. I've done that, but it just gives you the opportunity to feel for weight rather than see it.
So I think we're going to be coming to the end of an hour, which I know is our deadline
wow.
for putting stuff up on IGTV. So I will just kind
Okay.
of round you up if that's all right.
Sure, yeah. Wow, I thought that was went on for a while.
That flew by, didn't it? We've had lots of really great comments, a couple more questions, which Wez or myself will answer on our Facebook comments. So thank you for all your questions. You can always re-watch the videos on YouTube and IGTV, and they remain on our Facebook page as well, as I know we've had lots of comments from lecturers and students. So that's a really great resource that if you want to head back to have another look over at them, you totally can. Wez, it's been amazing. Do you want to just finish up by telling us what the dolly head is called? Or you can have a little look over the options.
Yeah, I'll look over the options. I'll look at the names and look at his face, see what one I think matches him better, and then I'll contact the winner and give him a free T-shirt of mine. Not mine, but one of my brands.
I'll give you the T-shirt off my back.
Yeah, T-shirt off my back. But for now, we'll call him the Candy Cut, and he's essentially complete. But yeah, that's a good bit of fun.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's been such a fun session, and I know so many people have found it really, really interesting and been inspired, not necessarily for the whole look, but definitely the look.
Oh, brilliant.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
No,
You too.
bye.
See you soon, guys. Bye-bye.